hardly one thing which is mentioned in that report is Pakistan. There are plethora of areas and reasons which hints that how did this counterinsurgency or nation building project or state building project, whatever you call it, with a squandered opportunity of 2 decades and around $2 trillion was wasted. When we approach and try to appreciate that complex web, in our mind we are quite clear that we are not dealing with the Westphalian idea of a central state which has all authority and which is extending its execution orders in nook and corner of all of the country. What we are dealing over there is multiple layer of influences of different entities which has masqueraded as a de facto government. So this is the situation which we are dealing over there. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we do see coordination and cooperation, and we do see sort of a mutual interest and convergence of interest, like dealing with ISIS-K. It is in the interest of the de facto Afghan government also that such entities who are violent, who challenge their own rationale even of taking over a forceful government, but still which can claim that they can monopolize the violence in the given territory. If that is, idea is basically challenged by any group, it doesn't look good on their part. So there is, in some areas, convergence of interest that those groups should be curtailed, controlled, managed as far as their violent capacity is concerned. At times, we do feel that there are deficiency and capacity issues serious. Probably there would be intent to maintain and manage such groups like TTP or others, but they are not fully equipped to do the job. We have seen that such non-state actors were not managed fully in terms of curtailing their violent capability with the $2 trillion and the biggest military might documented in mankind's history, with the presence of 20 years. If that could not be attained by militaries from Australia to US, from US to UK, from UK to, you just name it, how could, on a realistic account, that it should be expected of an insurgent group which was fighting all these forces for the last 20 years, and they've been just morphed into a role where they have to take up the governance role. So an insurgent group who only knows fight or how to fight has all of a sudden have to manage that violence, collect taxes, deliver on education account, health services. It's a bit ambitious. And in that ambition, I feel, because we have done, my soldiers are being killed on daily basis. Civilian populace is being targeted on daily basis, particularly in the 2 provinces of Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We have to set the milestones which are achievable, which are doable. And we do believe that we are not alone in resolving this issue, because the threat at a level, it is imminent for Pakistan, but in the midterm future, I feel it is a threat to the whole of region. So a regional approach is required along with all the neighborhood of Afghanistan. I recall here a prescient couplet of poet of East, who we call and identify as Dr. Muhammad Iqbal. He's commented on the situation of Afghanistan in a very interesting Persian couplet that آسیا یک پیکر آب و گل است. ملت افغان در آن دل است. در کشاد او کشاد آسیا، در فساد او فساد آسیا. That the body politic of entire Asia is like an idol, and the nation or nationhood of Afghan is placed like a heart in that idol. And if there is a chaos in the heart, there would be chaos in the whole of Asia. And if there is a peace in heart, there would be peace in the whole of continent. This is the guiding principle. This is enlightening principle. This is where we draw our inspiration to approach, see, and draw a conclusion that how Afghanistan should be dealt with, which has direct connection with groups like that. So we have got a holistic approach of application of kinetics, having different leverages in terms of trade, having other economic opportunities which could be offered as a leverage, and encouraging our traditional social, political, and historical ties. Because no matter what people say, let me remind you and your audience that we are a country who has been host to around 5 million Afghans for 5 decades. There are people who were born there, there are people who were raised there, there are people who are buried there. All they know about Afghanistan is that it was an ancestral place from where their parentage came. But for all the practical purposes, they have attended our schools, they have attended our colleges, they have attended our universities. People would argue that there is a constituency of anti-Pakistan sentiment within Afghanistan. Well, there is. And I, as a Pashtun, I do understand the genesis of that and the background of that. But on a larger account, when it comes people-to-people contact, I've always seen that Afghans have got more of a positive investment in Pakistani society rather than normally people would.
We could spend the next hour and a half on this subject that you have raised. I appreciate that response. We're running short of time, so I'm going to stop any further questions I have and turn to our audience here. Please raise your hand. I will call on you. Stand up. Please indicate who you are and any affiliation you have. And then the Prime Minister will answer your question. We'll start in the back. Yes, ma'am. On the aisle there.
And UNGA, and obviously this is right here. Being a Prime Minister of Pakistan, you just hinted upon few very vital challenges that Pakistan is facing right now. And top of the list, because I'm a security analyst as well, and I cover war and conflict for Pakistan for last 19 years. So do you see any silver lining? Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel? Specifically talking about from the Afghan side right now, that we have a huge troubled border with sharing with Afghanistan. So can you hint upon some of the issues right now that are we able to handle those problems? You being caretaker Prime Minister of Pakistan, or you think that you are going to leave these challenges to the coming government who's going to take charge after you?
Thank you.
Well, in my audience, I presume there is a Japanese presence also. And after Pearl Harbor, the kind of relation US and Japan enjoys does give me reasons for all the silver linings and being hopeful. And when I think about the German occupancy of Eastern Europe and then its Western neighborhood also, and when I see EU as a bloc, it multiplies and amplifies my silver lining. I do not see that Pakistan-Afghan relationship are mired to the level that even human history is failed to guide us and enlighten us and keep us sanguine. So that's all I would respond to your query. I am very hopeful. We need to be focused, consistent, and with an open mind. If we approach one another, there are many areas where we can have a focused outcome as per mutual interest to both sides.
I'm going to remind everyone that this session, of course, is on the record, and we're going to go to one of our online members for their question.
We will take the next question from Shireen Tahir-Keli.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Prime Minister.
Walaikum assalam.
This is Shireen Tahir-Keli, Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies. I'd like to back up to the first question that Steve Hadley asked you and sort of ask if you believe that, given political parties' disagreements currently on show in Pakistan, whether you believe that these parties will agree to the rules of the game for an inclusive and fair election in Pakistan. Thank you.
Would the parties agree? I couldn't get the question.
Could you, Shireen, could you
just
clarify a
please-
little bit? Who are you talking about in terms of your question?
Well, in other words, there seems, do you expect all major political parties that currently exist in Pakistan to be part of, be able to take part in the upcoming election?
Will there be
all of them.
participation by all the parties?
I do not have any confusion in my mind or in the government that all the parties who are registered with Election Commission of Pakistan are legally, politically, morally allowed, and they will participate in the political process. There is no confusion as far as the government or the caretaker government is.
Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
Assalamu alaikum, Mr. Prime Minister. My question is, as you're aware of the unfolding situation, the crisis between India and Canada over allegedly killing of their citizen by the intelligence agencies of India, as explained by the Prime Minister of. You're from the Balochistan, sir, and you've been seeing these insurgency. In fact, we have a Kulbhushan, one of the naval officers captured from the same region where you belong and you're from. Are you going to raise this question in tomorrow's speech, or do you have anything to say about that, sir?
I think so. The problem is more deep-rooted even than my reference in tomorrow's speech. And why I say so? I am a caretaker prime minister of a country. I'm not a propagandist over it. My fear is more deep-rooted in the serious business of mainstreaming of Hindutva's politics. I am fully aware that how does and from where they are taking those skewed and distorted revivalist historical views and giving it a political color and explaining and giving meaning to a new social contract on Indian Union. It's not the social contract which was taken inspiration by Rousseau. It's of Savarkar. And that has a lot of ideological affinities and brotherhood. The Saffron Brotherhood is more near to the Nazi brotherhood. I'm not accusing here anyone. I'm talking about the empirical evidence and data published by international academia. It is not what Pakistan has said. This trend of Hindutva, which was encapsulated and mainstreamed by RSS and VHP and other affiliated groups, has an existential threat for the peripheral existence of all the minorities, be it Muslims, Christians, Sikhs, and others. The idea that they have got the peripheral right to exist, or if they want to be mainstream, they have to have an alteration of identity. They can be Hindu Christians or Hindu Muslims or Hindu Sikhs, but that grand idea of which they sometimes convey in a relatively innocuous manner, that this is a cultural expression, which it definitely is not. It's a purely political one. And that has a serious challenge for Indian Union to exist as a pluralistic liberal democracy. This is a domestic challenge, and that challenge is translating itself into the region as well. Because when you do take such chauvinistic tendencies, you want to dominate the region in the first phase. And here comes Kulbhushan and the commander and encouraging and financing and supporting the terror activities at the behest of the state, Indian state. Unfortunately, the decent Indian people, the hard-earning people, their taxpayers' money is covertly being directed for such gory actions which they might not affiliate with, which they might not side with. And I'm pretty much sure, and I'm a believer in the positive nature of human being. But these ideologues of Hindutva, they are becoming emboldened in a manner that they are now going beyond the region. And this initial unfortunate killing of Mr. Singh on Canadian soil is a reflection of that ominous tendency. We, Pakistan, have always been critical of this jingoistic, belligerent Indian attitude. But for obvious economic and strategic reasons, many players in the Western capital chose to ignore this fact and reality and this side of politics over there. To me, Hindutva, ISIS, center of the right, present on European continent, probably even here in the US. In nature, it's a global brotherhood of fascism. It's a global brotherhood of chauvinism. It's a global brotherhood of darkness. And all the decent human beings who are on the other side of the divide, who believe in pluralistic society, who believe in diversification, who believe and agreeing to disagree, they should be wary of these tendencies. It's not just the elimination of a single individual. It's an upcoming challenge to the global order, where they're trying to explain and claim that they have an alternate order even to the Western civilization, and the Western civilization can learn from the old Indus Sanskrit-based inspiration. And let me clarify, by the way, Hindutva has got nothing to do with the beautiful and decent religion of Hinduism. Hinduism is altogether a different spiritual experiment of last 4,000 or 5,000 years based in Sanskrit Vedas. It resides in our region, it belongs to our region, and it is, in my opinion, even a partial part of Pakistani identity also, because we have got sizable Hindu population. Inglat Mata is one of the most important Hindu pilgrimage site of my province, in which all over the world, the Hindus would be interested to come and visit and do the pilgrimage. So that needs to be discerned.
We're running a little short of time here. I'm going to check my watch. Let's do another question from here. We'll take another question then from Zoom, and then we'll see where we are. So, ma'am in the yellow back here.
Hi, I'm Allison Silver from For Context. We have been reading a lot about the Chinese economy and the issues there. I was wondering if you could just explain for us what the relationship is now between Pakistan and China.
Good question. What is the relationship between Pakistan and China?
In terms of economics, or
I think probably the whole, she started in terms of economics and the economic problems China is facing. Maybe a piece of that, but I think the real question is, a lot of Americans have a question, what is the relationship between Pakistan and China? How would you characterize that relationship?
Pakistan enjoys a strategic relationship with Pakistan, with China. We are very clear that there are people who would qualify Pakistan as China's Israel. It is probably more a good analogy for American audience, because you do understand and appreciate the value of Israel for the United States. Pakistan and China has a lot in common in terms of the emerging threats within the region. There are commonality on certain issues, for instance, one China policy, be it in Tibet, Xinjiang, Taiwan. We do commonalities and share the stated goals that we would stand shoulder to shoulder with each other. And it is reciprocated by the Chinese side as well. Let me remind you when in 2013, around 2012 and 13, when the many people around the Western capitals, they were predicting that Pakistan is a failed state and it's going to be dysfunctional soon. In that context, our Chinese friends intervened, and they jumped in with a sizable project, which was a showcase project of their basic BRI initiative, known as CPAC. And from there, the confidence and the positive, I would see the feeling in the market initiated that this is not the case, that Pakistan is a dysfunctional, dystopian state becoming one. And the revival, the economic revival, initiated from that point. We got infrastructure development projects, our port development started from there, energy interventions, sustainable energy interventions projects were initiated, and we have realized its first phase. Now we are transforming to its second and then long-term third phase of these projects. I feel we have a lot of potential for trade and economic activity with each other, because it's next door 1.5 billion population, which is friendly, which is receptive. There are areas of gaps in which we can trade more with one another, though at the moment it is very much underinvested. Our relationship has a lot of potential to improve. Strategically, we have always sided with each other. When I'm explaining and talking about the positive bonding between China and Pakistan, we do appreciate and understand at the same time that there is a misperception at a global scale or at a regional scale that there is an adversary or maybe hot pursuit between two great powers of United States and China. We don't see that happening. we don't see that happening at all. We do see a sort of economic competitiveness between the two great economies, between the different civilizations. Yes, we do see that there is a mid-sized entities within our region and beyond our region, which has incentivized this paranoid and insecure situation between the two huge powers. And if they do not exploit on that, there wouldn't be enough attention for flirtation. And the so-called containment of China policy, which has become jargon for the people on the mostly in the center of the right here in US or on European continent. When this policy of containment of China was started somewhere in early 90s, it was what, 8th or 9th largest economy of the world? Now as we speak, it has become the 2nd largest. And probably within few years, the dragon would be the 1st largest economy of the world. So what do we do with this containment policy? Has it worked? Is there any alternate governance competitive system which needs to be altered or changed? And if that doesn't realize, my own humble assessment is that policy would convert into engagement of China. And this entire strategic calculus which we are seeing right now would be morphed and it would be changed. And all the pertinent questions which it seems to be pointed at Pakistan and our relationship with China would alter. And probably we would be witnessing the 1971 era when Kissinger flew to Islamabad and did a rapprochement with China through Pakistani capital. So I do see an opportunity that there is an engagement economically, politically, socially of China, and Pakistan would be partner in that journey.
Prime Minister, I think some of us would say that we did not have a containment policy in the 1990s. I would say in the Bush administration, we did not have a containment policy of China during our 8 years. And the Biden administration would say they don't have a containment policy of China now. So in some sense, I think some of your comments are maybe a little troubling to the American audience. I want to ask you something, and then we're out of the end of time, but I think it's very important to say. Given what you said about China, are there limits to the Pakistani-China relationship, in particular maybe limits in terms of security cooperation or military cooperation? Because Pakistan is a major non-NATO ally of the United States, and we think that must mean something. And so I guess I would ask you, just in closing here, if you would say a word about, are there limits that you see in the relationship between Pakistan and China, and particularly in the area of security?
Well, Pakistan is a sovereign and independent country when it comes to security and strategic issues, when it would involve its and would have implications for its own population. Our top priority is Pakistan. And it would limit and it would guide us that we exercise all our options in the best of our own interest. But what I was referring to is there's tons of literature available. Probably Western academia is talking about containment China policy. Probably some policymakers are talking. It may not be the government's official position, but it's a well-entrenched position in Western universities, in Western capitals, probably in think tanks, and everyone talks about this idea of containing China in a very open and candid manner. So that's where I borrowed and initiated my own analysis on the situation. It was not just to get to make uncomfortable any audience. But as far as the strategic and security policy choices are concerned, Pakistan always would prefer its own interests while viewing and having a balance and giving priority to our strategic partner, China. Its legitimate interest would always be an area which we would be considering perpetually.
Thank you. I think we're out of time. I want to thank the members of CFR who've joined us today, both here in the room and also by Zoom. Obviously, Mr. Prime Minister, I want to thank you for coming and spending time with us and being so candid in your comments.
Thank you for having me.
Please note that the video and transcript of this session will be posted on the CFR website, and we hope you can join us for CFR's next hybrid event, which will be with the Prime Minister of Malaysia today at 2 o'clock. And I would ask if members, would remain seated until the Prime Minister has exited. And again, Prime Minister, thank you for being with us.